thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar. My name is Shafali Kapadia. I am the writer of The Inside Lane, and we've got a great group of experts here who are going to talk all about technology, what's working, what's not so great, and how you can implement it in your business. I'll introduce our guests here. We have Ben Murchison, Director of Technology at RJ Logistics, Megan Orth, Senior Director of Commercial Connectivity at C.H. Robinson, and Michael Quimby, COO of Kooner Fleet Management Solutions. So Ben, I'd love to start off with you. What's a technology you're seeing that's really starting to be helpful for trucking fleets and carriers today?
I think it really starts with a strong, sound TMS that's integration capable these days. More and more valuable freight tech vendors entering the industry, and the ability to be flexible and quickly be able to develop an integration there to really make your TMS your one kind of core source of information is key. So I think that's maybe obvious, but definitely the most helpful. APIs come along with that in addition to BI and reporting.
And Megan, what are you seeing? Are you also seeing TMSs being useful, or what other technologies are really popping up today that are helpful?
Yes. So obviously, I would always recommend a TMS that becomes your record of truth. That's where your data storage, to Ben was saying, like that is just like basic and you need it. I would say the big unlock, obviously, at Robinson is the AI. That's where we've been really focusing a lot of our technology spend, really with that concept of taking that unstructured data and getting it to structured. So even how Ben mentioned earlier, have your TMS, obviously APIs are an unlock. AI is the next generation of how those unlocks go.
And perfect that you brought up AI, because we'll be getting to that a lot during this webinar, of course. But Michael, I want to get your take as well. What are you seeing that's a technology that's really having an impact and being helpful today for trucking carriers?
Here at Kooner FMS, the technology that we're really embracing is really predictive analytics through really AI, right? So maintenance predictive analytics, and we get data from all sorts of sources, right? We have open APIs, we have information coming in from the OEMs, information coming in from our kind of field first technology and multiple other suppliers. And then we're taking that information and really distilling it down to make it actionable, right? And then we look at that. And as the fleet manager, we want it to be predictive and prescriptive in what we're doing for the client.
And Michael, you mentioned APIs, Ben, you talked about that as well. Michael, tell us a little bit about how you work with a carrier, especially a small fleet, to kind of set up that API. And what does that entail on their end in terms of getting that up and running?
Yeah, so we make it relatively seamless for the client in the setup process. We'll guide them through the whole API process. We have unlimited API entrance into our system. So we'll work with them. We have an IT team and our support group that works with the clients to make it really, really seamless. So, when I think about technology and how it impacts the transportation industry, oftentimes you talk about AI, you talk about APIs, you talk about all of this stuff, and it seems relatively complex. But to me, it just needs to be really simple, and it needs to be smart and make improvements for the client's fleet. So we make it relatively seamless. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but there's not much the client has to do on their end.
Yeah, I think that's always good to hear from the client's perspective, right? That there's not too much to do and it's nice and seamless. Ben, what would you say are some of the advantages of APIs, or how do you work with those with some of your trucking fleets?
As a brokerage, we're fortunately partnered with several key freight brokerage vendors that really they're the ones that we initially are, connecting to support an API integration. But to just kind of echo what Michael said, those vendors, I think, have come a long way in making it seamless for what we would consider brokered carriers to, through backend APIs, be able to share, position data, for example, and make that very easy for the carriers, to where I think that's come a long way, especially in the past couple of years. Say you're onboarding a carrier and you want to be able to connect to their ELDs. Well, that process, I think, has gotten easier for carriers to do. Now, we're capable as well, if we need to set up something just direct with carrier partners, I was going to talk about this a little bit later on, but we've got some platforms we use to quickly spin up API endpoints and connections. And there are a lot of great tools out there today that are secure and fast development to be able to do that.
So we're hearing a lot about technology that is useful. Let's talk about the flip side of that question. What is talked about a lot, but is maybe a little bit hype, too early in the process, not quite there yet? Megan, what are you seeing in terms of technology that maybe is talked about more than actually having an impact on trucking, at least for now?
I would say, while people think AI is hype, we at Robinson have obviously seen tremendous value in that. From a hype perspective, I think it really comes down to all the technology can be useful. It's, do you apply the right business case to it? I don't really see it as, oh, this technology, there's a time and place for every technology. It's just how you're applying it to the business, and is it really trying to solve the outcomes you're getting at?
And Megan, your company works with all kinds of carriers, big, small. For some of
Yes.
those smaller businesses, what do you see as things that these fleet owners need to make sure they're paying attention to and really can't miss out on?
Yeah, I'd go back to like our original. If you can have a TMS or you have access to integrate, that is obviously always preferred rather than the calls and the emails and the texting. But as AIs come out, that's what it's helping us with, right? So whether you're calling or you're texting, being able to extract that data and get it into the system. So I would say just be on the lookout for ways that you can use technology, and maybe you don't have to really change your process, but are your partners looking at some of those ways where the tech can help you and meet you where you are and the sophistication that you're at? Because we all know all of this, costs money. So what's the ROI, especially if you're a small fleet owner? You might not have a large investment you can make. So really trying to make sure you work with partners that can meet you where you are in your technology stack.
Mhm. And Michael, what are you seeing in terms of AI? Do you think it's hype? Do you think it's practical and worth looking at today?
Oh, absolutely. AI is absolutely worth looking at. But you asked an interesting question. You talk about the what's kind of real and what's kind of hype, and I have given that some thought. I definitely do not think AI is hype. That is it is impacting our business and our clients' business today. But when I start to think about some other things from a technology standpoint, not just IT, but you think of fully autonomous vehicles. There have been great strides with autonomy, and I think that's one of the biggest breakthroughs we've had maybe in the last year is autonomous vehicles and getting out of those kind of restricted zones, right? That's pretty impactful. But fully autonomous, we're not there yet. The infrastructure is not there yet. We're not there as a country, if you will. So, electric long haul trucks, to me, that is still hype once again because of the infrastructure. And then something I see, Ben probably has it on his radar because it will directly impact the brokerage business, but it's really leveraging blockchain for logistics, right? I mean, that is something that is a little bit hyped right now, but it's coming. And I'm sure Ben and the team are going to have a solution for that. And, we all know what blockchain is. It just aligns the end user with transportation. It kind of cuts out the middleman. And the last thing I'd say about it, something that we don't talk enough about as an industry, is hydrogen. I do not think hydrogen is hype. I think hydrogen is really early and it's going to be hugely impactful. My guess, and I am not Alan Greenspan, but probably 5 years from now, we'll see a lot more hydrogen within the infrastructure.
And Ben, what about you? What are you seeing that is maybe a little bit of hype, or what are your thoughts on AI? Is that hype or is that really useful today?
Definitely useful. Absolutely not hype. From a company adoption to just an individual use every day. For me, I use it every day and it's made me more efficient and I can do things quicker. So we're fully embracing that over here. I didn't want to name, anything specific, but I'm going to join Michael and say that I think blockchain certainly has some value to it, but not as much adoption right now. that probably, still has a way to go. And of course, I think, one company's hype may be another company's help. And something can be potentially mislabeled as hype if it's not implemented properly. So there's a lot of great tools out there. And from our brokerage perspective, what we've seen and demoed, I think when these AI product offerings are implemented properly and supported, then a lot less hype and a lot more useful, helpful product out there.
And I think that's a great point about it's all about how you implement it and what's the use case. So definitely important to think about that. Now, I think for particularly small business trucking owners, one of the big barriers a lot of times is they don't necessarily have the resources or the money or the time to start thinking about technology and something that would possibly overhaul their operations as they're trying to do everything else that they have to do. How do you, Michael, I can start with you on this question, but how do you sort of talk to them about thinking about this balance between innovating and adopting technology that helps their business while also trying to maintain those costs and operational things and putting out day-to-day fires?
Yeah. So look, the transportation space itself is super capital intensive, right? We all know that it's capital intensive by nature. There's a lot of regulatory requirements, the complexity around there, and infrastructure dependency. So there's a lot happening in transportation that these small or medium sized client needs to really balance out. So one of the things that, when we talk to our clients about fleet management and where they're headed, it's making, incremental innovation adjustments in their business. You don't have to go all in on a technology and be very disruptive to your business, right? That's costly, it's expensive, and it's risky. So you can do incremental innovation, right? You can look at fuel upgrades, digital ticketing. There's a lot of stuff that can really help the small business that doesn't have to be a big swing for the fence and be very disruptive to their business. There are also partnerships that small and medium, especially minority-owned businesses, can work with the government, right, in partnerships. So you have public to private partnerships that oftentimes they'll sponsor and add some support to the client. And then I guess last, just really focusing on sustainability and how you keep your drivers happy. So kind of field first technology. So whether it's technicians or your drivers, that is super, super important, and focus on field first would be my suggestion around that.
Megan, how do you work with some of the carrier partners that you have in terms of understanding this balance between technology, but also recognizing some of those barriers we talked about?
Yeah, so we have very tight feedback loops with our carriers and our business partners. And again, we're always just trying to understand where they're at and in what system or what technology, whether it's a driver app or they need to go to a website or they truly need to text us, in different methods. So we're using a very data-driven approach too, to see their current state and really try to focus as a broker, meeting them where they are. So we use, again, a lot of data to figure that out and then work on integrations, even though, make it really easy for them to work with us.
And do you typically find that the data that they have, is that organized in a way? Is it usually clean, or is there typically a lot of work that needs to be done to...
Careful, Megan, be careful.
Yeah. Oh, it's always perfect. Yeah, I think that's just a challenge in our industry, right? And that goes back, weaving back in the AI, and that's the unlock for our industry, is because so much of our data is unstructured and not typically clean and easy to use. And so that's where you can really use this technology to help solve problems that have just not been affordable to solve in the past.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the benefits of technology is being able to tackle those industry-wide problems.
Yep.
And Ben, how do you work with some of your carrier partners in terms of this balance of cost and being able to think about still adopting technology?
Well, cost is always going to get a lot of attention, understandably. What I've seen actually, I guess I could call it a trend, is that more tech vendors kind of offering, if you will, an ROI template for them to consider. And maybe they've generated these, over times with customers they've previously implemented and said, hey, this is kind of how they looked at it. So we've got a couple different things for you to consider here, because some carriers aren't going to be able to sit down and be able to have something just a plug and play model from an ROI standpoint. So I've seen that. I think that's been helpful. I just harp on implementation at this point too, because a very quick way to decimate ROI is to poorly implement something. Seen it too many times, not at RJ, but in other past lives. So I think what can help with that too, both from a cost perspective and implementation, or Michael alluded to it, kind of phased rollouts. Start small if you can. I know everything's moving quickly, but if you can phase a rollout and start maybe with a smaller section, that could potentially reduce some cost initially until you are confident you're going to get that ROI, and then should be easier to implement.
And I think ROI is super important when evaluating any kind of technology. Ben, I'm wondering too if there are maybe more qualitative factors that fleets should consider. So not necessarily just the monetary benefit, but how do they think about some of these softer, less tangible benefits that might come from a tech adoption?
I think that anybody, sitting in that operations seat, or, even back office seat, they're going to be appreciative of good technology at this point, things that make them more efficient. Something properly implemented where you are making a difference. It's allowing you to perform higher, potentially earn more, and in some cases that can go a long way quickly and can set you up for more excitement and drive to potentially implement more down the road. And it expands to offering better service to your customer, more accuracy. So I think about that from a qualitative perspective. Always ways to look at quantitative, but qualitative can't be overlooked. And it impacts I think just the overall vibe of the company, and you want that to go well.
Michael, how do you talk to some of your customers or carrier partners about ROI, but then also some of those other benefits?
Yeah, so we look at ROI through two lenses, right? Quantitative for sure. You have to talk about the payback, the money, and how that looks. And we actually have models that we work with our clients to work through those cost benefit analysis, right? So quantitative, super important, but I think you're really focused on the qualitative piece, and there's a lot in our space. When I think of the qualitative benefits of what we do and the impact that technology is having, you're talking about driver satisfaction and retention, right? Technology plays a heavy role in that. You have faster customer response times, absolutely critical, right? Critical to have that open two-way communication. We could talk about that later with clients, but have that faster response time. You have better safety engagements and fewer accidents, improved compliance, and time saved, right? That's the biggest qualitative piece that we actually take it and try to make it quantitative and build it into the models, because it saves tremendous time, which has a significant payback for the organization.
Yep, time is money. I think all of us would love to buy back some time. So absolutely, really important factor there. Megan, what do you think about with ROI, but also some of those not so measurable benefits that come with tech?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely focus on the touches, right? And automation and time savings. And I think we're all pressured, especially in this freight cycle, to do more with less. So how do you really streamline processes? How do you do these things in the bottom of the freight cycle, which we've been in for years now? Because then as that freight cycle starts to move up, then you're prepared for that. So that's where we spend a lot of our time with our clients too, is talking about how we can just continue to be efficient, do more with less.
And Megan, are you hearing at all about cybersecurity being a concern when it comes to adopting technology and maybe putting more of that data into a central system or even in the cloud?
Yes, absolutely. That is a conversation we have almost with all of our clients, right? Is as we start to get more digital, how do we ensure that we're protecting the data? We have lots of compliance trainings, PII, right? All that information and how we're being secure about it. So yes, we spend a lot of time in that area and working through our processes and policies there.
And Ben, do you hear a lot about cybersecurity concerns, or how are you sort of working with customers to make sure that all of their customer data stays secure?
I'm hearing of it more and more. I think in our industry, even just a couple years ago, just kind of felt like, oh, we're not really a big target here, but that's certainly changed over the past couple years. And to where we are now, there are all these integrations and this, building web of networks that you have. You want to make sure that you're limiting your exposure and that you understand from, vendor to vendor, partner to partner, what steps and measures they're taking, and then just, making sure you're doing that in-house as well. And that goes from, when I'm thinking of a broker, we've got so many websites that we log in and out of, and, you think about naturally just staff overturn, people leave. Are you aware of where all of your data is, internally and externally, and how are you securing that? And just not losing sight of that is huge at this point. And like Megan said, just trying to get some, the right volume and pace of information to your end users. Education, and staying current there.
And is there something that you think created that shift of trucking and logistics, maybe not necessarily being a target, to that coming up more and more in your conversations?
I think an increase, certainly, in events, and likely more emphasis on that protection from their customers. I think those are the two, but there have been some fairly well publicized large carriers with cybersecurity issues over the past couple of years, and I think it's been good that has been out there and talked about. I think that's helped shine a light on it, but there's certainly more, I think, collectively that can be done.
Michael, are you hearing a lot about cybersecurity in your day-to-day conversations?
Yeah, we are. And I think of the transportation space, and, they do take it seriously, right? It's something that's on the forefront of what they're thinking about. When you think about the potential opportunities with ransomware, phishing schemes, whatever is happening out there. I mean, that's real. You have a ransomware, and now you have a client, or even it could be us at Kooner. We have a whole dispatch center, right, around it. In addition to fleet management, we are a mobile maintenance organization. So we're dispatching all the time. And if we were to have some ransomware come in and lock us down, I mean, that's a problem. So we do continuous training internally here with our team, whether it's our dispatchers, our technicians, everybody that's touching the technology. We do a lot of training, and our clients are doing the same thing. Ben talked about increased events. Not only have there been increased events, but in super spike in increased detection. So you look at Q1 2025 to Q1 2024 in the CCJ, they had something in there that I read a while back that detections have spiked. So to me, that says, hey, transportation companies, they're a target, much more of a target now, but they're also protecting themselves because they're not incidents, they're just detections, which is really cool that we're able to thwart those off.
Right. Half the battle is even recognizing that something is happening and then being able to act upon it.
Yeah, for sure.
We do have a couple of questions from our audience here in the chat. And if anybody watching has questions, feel free to put those in there. We can ask our panelists. We do have a question for Michael. What solution are you using for your maintenance, and what AI solutions are you integrating?
So our fleet management software is proprietary. So we built it. We partnered with a company out of the UK to build this really on our kind of spec and direction, which is really neat. And what we really wanted to build into it is what I said kind of in the beginning. It is helping us be predictive and prescriptive around maintenance, going down to the component level. So we're able to anticipate failures before they happen. And that avoids, we all know that, right? A lot of downtime, missed loads, customer disruption. So what we use, it's called Fleet IQ, and it's proprietary to Kooner. We built it.
Michael, what do you think is sort of this danger of not implementing technology, whether it's in any aspect of the business? Is there a risk that carriers are taking if they don't do that?
Yes, I mean, it is increased downtime. It's client disruption. You're going to get left behind. You're not going to be able to be competitive in the marketplace because everybody is going to be embracing this technology and you're going to get left behind. And, that's one of the cool things I think about with technology. When I think about the impact of technology on the space, the large companies like C.H. Robinson, right? They have the resources to invest in a lot of this stuff. Smaller companies don't, but technology, you can do it incremental, as we were talking about, and that helps them to be competitive in their space.
And Megan, as one of the leading companies when it comes to 3PL and technology, how do you sort of see your role in this overall landscape of trucking and innovation and trying to adopt more technology for the industry as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to innovate, keep disrupting the industry as the technology and the tool stacks get going, right? It's really exciting with the AI work and all the opportunity we have in front of us. So, but as we do that and we implement that and we push the industry and we push those standards, then our customers and carriers also get the benefit of that, right? So when we think about AI, the impacts that we've had so far is just better service, like faster, less manual touches, being able to, from a quote to an appointment to getting that tender, we've just reduced dramatically the time and the touches that it took, right? When it would go in all these queues. And so from there, you just get better outcomes and you get more data on system that then allows more analysis and process improvement. We've been able to take some of our data from voice automation and go improve processes downstream. So we're really just getting started, but that data really helps lead the way in what we go solve for next.
And Ben, you have kind of an interesting position as director of technology. So not only do you, of course, see what the carriers are doing, but also with your own organization, how do you prioritize what technology you want to invest in and adopt right away versus maybe what's in the future, and what do you pass on?
First and foremost, get the smart people in the room, and then they let me join. But I'm just kidding. But that's true. Get the right leaders, in addition to the people that are going to be in the seat that are using this. That can't be overlooked because ultimately that success or fail result is going to reside there. Then just understanding what are we trying to achieve? What are we after? What's our time frame on ROI? When can we expect to see this? And I think just being prepared to, of course, implement, but track progress, see where we fall down, or see where we're gaining. And I think also being prepared with AI, and I always love this saying, you don't want to automate chaos. Kind of having your house in order, and maybe that's a good preliminary step to take, is to look at the modular section of the business where you're going to implement AI and first evaluate, are we doing things right today in current state with the tools we have? Maybe AI is going to come in and help you clean that up, but usually there's a little bit of room for improvement there. It could be data quality, process configurations. I know I went very broad on that, but it's a broad topic. Lots of ways to answer it.
Absolutely. Just shows you how much potential technology has in all of these different aspects.
Don't automate a bad process. That is for sure.
Yeah.
I've got one last question for all of you. And Megan, I can start with you here. But what are you enthusiastic about? What excites you about the future of technology in logistics and trucking?
No, I feel like a broken record here, but the AI, I mean, it's just so exciting. Problems that we haven't been able to solve in the past because they would have cost too much and spent too much dev time are now literally at our fingertips and we can go after them. So I'm really excited about all of that that's going to be coming to this space now that we have that tool in our toolbox.
Ben, what's your perspective on this? What really gets you excited about the future of technology in this industry?
From a brokerage perspective, I think there are a lot of really cool tools that are out there. And of course, that I think we've got opportunities to quote more, there's great revenue gaining opportunity out there if done right. But ultimately, the drivers are the heroes, and I like seeing what's on the horizon to hopefully make their job safer, more efficient. We take care of them. That's going to just have a ripple effect across the supply chain and our industry. So I was thinking about them as well because they're the engine that gets from A to B.
Yes, great point. And Michael, you've got the last word here. What are you excited about when it comes to the future of technology and trucking?
To piggyback a little bit off of what Ben just said, when I think about drivers, super important. And that's where we're focused, drivers, but also the technicians. So when I think about technology and the impact it's going to have on transportation, it's really in those two groups of people, which are the lifeblood and the backbone of what is the backbone of our economy, right? Transportation. So I think about the headwinds my clients face, driver shortages, fuel cost, emissions, road safety, all this stuff that they have to solve for. And what technology is going to do is really make it more sustainable. It's going to make it tech savvy and then resilient in the marketplace. So that is really cool. And then what comes out of that is, once again, I'll mention predictive analytics, and once again, predictive and prescriptive analytics. Better alignment across the entire supply chain is going to be super important. And then once again, leveling the playing field for the small and mid-sized clients. I mean, that is going to be really impactful, and technology is going to have a major role in that.
Yeah, and I think this idea of making sure that technology aids the humans, whether it's the drivers, the technicians, is so important because that's what it's all about, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing your insights today. And thank you to our audience for joining us. I hope you found this very insightful and got to hear some good tips from our leaders today. Thank you, everyone, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.